our belief is that the funnel is replaced by brand patterns. And that's essentially a more holistic understanding of how the brand functions over time, networks of associations that you have within brands, the interplay of those associations, and then how they lead to outcomes.
I'm thrilled to welcome to the Current studio today, Andy Littlewood, Global Chief Product Officer of Andy, welcome.
Thank you, pleasure to be here.
So Andy, you've had extensive experience working both in agencies and with data and insights. And I'm sure you've been exposed to so many clients, so many marketing strategies. I'm curious to know, with all of that experience, what is the one thing that you wish more marketers were doing right now?
I think probably the biggest thing for me is commitment. When I see advertising, marketing, media fail or not perform as it could have done, it's generally because people didn't commit fully to that course of action. They had other priorities. There were things distracting from the field of vision. And I think, ultimately, it's about understanding the really big levers that you need to pull for the brand and with consumers, focusing on those, committing to those, and then orchestrating everything around that and making sure that you absolutely have a song that can sing from one hymn sheet, is very focused around one point of attention, and can ultimately play across all of your many touch points and activities.
All right, so Andy, you're a data guy. I'm curious, what is the most interesting data point you have seen this year, and maybe something that's influenced the way you're doing business?
What I would say is we have two big stats that we're thinking about in globally. One is that 75% of media will be bought in an automated way within a few years, right? And I think coupled with that, we have another stat which is about 90% of content will be produced by AI within a few years. So you put those both together, and I think it's safe to assume that media decisioning more and more will be done by Gen AI, and content production will be done by Gen AI. And I think they're incredibly important stats for us to think about and focus on, because what that means is that we're really going to be partnering with and propelled by algorithms into this next stage. And I think those are the two biggest things we're thinking about right now, and how can we really understand the patterns of those algorithms and how they're in play in the marketplace.
With AI, the direction that you pointed in matters, right? Saying what you're trying to accomplish is like half the battle. So how do you ensure that the brands you're working with have the right inputs?
It matters what you feed AI. And we believe that the start of that is really understanding your pattern, right? So brands are already interpreted by AI. If you put a brand into Mid-Journey and you say, make me an image that relates to this brand, it will produce a certain type of imagery based on the pattern that it has for that brand. The same happens in media algorithms. When you think about bidding and automated bidding that happens in programmatic, a lot of that is triggered by the brand and the brand presence online. We think the biggest understanding you should have before is what your pattern looks like and what that feeds into the algorithm and how you can manipulate that. And I think the biggest danger we see is that brands at the moment aren't necessarily aware of that. They've been using some quite, what we would say are oversimplified models, like the funnel, for example, the marketing funnel. And that's dangerous, because if you're using a simplified model that's very similar to lots of other brands, then you're going to get pulled to the mean by these algorithms. So that's essentially what we're putting forward and trying to avoid.
I love that you bring up the funnel, because it's one of the most popular stories The Current has published so far this year. Is an opinion piece with the headline, "It's time to retire the marketing funnel." And I feel like this is really on people's minds. If you had a chance to retire the funnel, what would you bring back in its place? What's the right metaphor?
Yeah, it's had its time.
Yeah.
I think it was a very useful model. It got us a long way. Maybe, people have oversimplified it, I think, in a lot of cases. But what it's led to is a lot of siloed thinking. a lot of dangerous practices in marketing where we're taking certain parts of marketing and saying, well, that's upper funnel, and that's middle funnel, and that's lower funnel, and then they are separating in how they deliver, and I think that's incredibly damaging for brands. So if we agree that the funnel is gone, somewhat, then I think we need to move on from that. And our belief is that the funnel is replaced by brand patterns. And that's essentially a more holistic understanding of how the brand functions over time, the kind of networks of associations that you have within brands, the interplay of those associations, and then how they lead to outcomes.
Andy, it's been so great to have you in the Current studio today. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure.